Thanks for joining us. We'll be keying this plant using the Jepson eFlora, beginning with the key to groups. Specimens available for examination without flowers, these either not present on the specimen or not produced at all, or specimens available for examination with flowers, often also producing seeds within fruits. In this case, this plant does not produce flowers or fruits at all. Bulblets, small bulbs or corms that are dispersed in place of seeds or fruits formed in place of flowers in inflorescence or inflorescence-like cluster, or bulblets 0. And again, this is a plant that doesn't have flowers and doesn't have inflorescences and forms no bulblets. Sporangia, sporangium cases, seeds, cones, or cone-like structures 0 or not readily apparent, plants in strictly vegetative condition, or sporangia, sporangium cases, seeds, cones, or cone-like structures present. In this case, we do have sporangia, borne in sori. Herbs reproducing by spores released directly from sporangia, the sporangia variously located on a abaxial leaf face, in stalked clusters arising from petiole or blade base, in hardened case at petiole base, in axils of linear or scale-like leaves, or in terminal cone-like structures, seeds and pollen never formed, lycophytes and ferns, or herbs to trees reproducing by seeds. In this case, we're looking at a fern, and it does have sporangial on the abaxial leaf face, borne in sori. This will take us to group 3, plants reproducing by spores released directly from sporangia, flowers and seeds never formed, lycophytes and ferns. So whenever you're keying a fern or a lycophyte, you can always skip right to group 3. Plant free-floating, raft-like, or stranded along shoreline or on drying mud, or plant anchored in soil or growing on another plant, if plant aquatic, rooted in bottom sediments. In this case, we have a terrestrial plant anchored in the soil. Leaves linear or scale or needle-like, entire or toothed, sometimes divided into linear lobes in Asplenium septentrionale. Veins generally 0 or 1 to few in Asplenium septentrionale, or leaves with well-developed blades, not linear or scale or needle-like, often lobed or compound, veins many. So in this case, we have well-developed leaf blades. Plant aquatic or in dried pools or creek beds, leaf palmately compound, leaflets 4, sporangia borne underground or underwater, enclosed in short-stalked, hard case attached near petiole base. Or plant terrestrial or strongly emergent if in wet soil, or growing on another plant, leaf simple or 1 to 4 times pinnate, if compound leaflets generally much more than 4, sporangia borne on aerial portion of leaf. So we have the sporangia borne here on the leaf, and these leaves are much divided and not in leaflets of 4. So we'll go with the second choice. Leaf divided into dissimilar sterile, trophophore, and fertile, sporophore parts. Sterile part with an entire or 1 to 3 times pinnate blade. Fertile part bladeless, sporangia borne in stalked cluster arising from petiole or blade base, new leaves never coiled, which would take us to the Ophioglossacea, or leaf not divided into dissimilar sterile and fertile parts, sporangia borne on underside of leaf, blade sometimes near margin, new leaves generally coiled, unrolling as they develop. So here's an excellent example of a coiled leaf blade, typical fern, fiddlehead, or crozier. And we've seen we have sporangia borne on the undersides of the leaves. Leaves of two dissimilar kinds, the fertile sporangium-bearing blades with greatly narrowed segments, or leaves all alike or nearly so, the fertile sporangium-bearing blades very similar in size and shape to sterile blades. In this case, these blades are monomorphic, and you may have to check a few leaves and flip them over and look on the underside to see if they're fertile or sterile. But in this case, all the leaves are more or less alike, whether or not they are fertile or bearing sporangia and sori. Sori, borne along or near margin of leaf, indusia 0, or sori covered by reflexed or recurved leaf margin or leaf margin segment, or sori borne away from margin on underside of leaf or leaflet, or sporangia scattered along veins and not clustered into sori, indusia present or not. So in this case, the sori are away from the leaf margin and they're not under a recurved leaf margin. So we will go with number 2. Sporangia scattered along veins, not clustered into distinct sori, indusia 0, pteridacea, or sporangia clustered in distinct sori, indusia sometimes present. In this case, the sori are very clearly visible. In this case, even on the upper adaxial surface of the leaf, you can see the sori. Indusia 0, or indusia present. In this case, you can see the indusium, which is this covering that is on top of the sori. So this flap covering the sori is called an indusium, and it is present. Sori linear to oblong or J-shaped, or sori more or less round. In this case, we have linear sori. Veins of leaf segments forming a network, sori generally 2 to 4 millimeters, linear oblong, end to end in rows parallel to midvein of leaf segment, leaves once pinnate with deeply pinnately lobed pinnae, which would bring us to Woodwardia in the Blacknaceae, or veins of leaf segments free, minor veins extending to segment margin without rejoining, sori 0.5 to 15 millimeters, linear, oblong, J-shaped, or reniform, not end-to-end in rows parallel to midvein or leaf segment. So in this case, we do have anastomosing veins, veins that do form a network where they rejoin, and the sori are in lines end-to-end, which gives the common name chain fern. So when we get into Blacknaceae, we would key to between these two genera, blade deeply pinnately lobed to once pinnate, pinnae unlobed, leaflets of two kinds, fertile, sterile, sori 2 per pinna, linear, more than 10 times longer than wide, 1 along each side of costa, would bring us to Struthiopterus, or blade once pinnate, pinnae deeply pinnately lobed, leaves of more or less one kind, sori many per lobe, oblong, 2 to 4 times longer than wide, end to end along each side of lobe midrib, some oblong to linear along costa also. So here we are with the end-to-end sori along the midvein. And you can see the way that this leaf is divided. So pinnate would be into these first division of divisions, and then pinnately lobed is the second order of division. So it's not quite bipinnate, but it is once pinnate and then deeply lobed. And so this would bring us again to Woodwardia. And so Struthiopterus would have been eliminated earlier in the key because it does have dimorphic fronds. It has two kinds, fertile and sterile. And again, Woodwardia has monomorphic fronds of just one kind. And so always a good plan to go and read the description carefully and see that it corresponds to your plant. And then this would take us to the single California native species, Woodwardia fimbriata. So again, with a description, the distribution, some excellent photos and illustrations for comparison. And then lastly, you can check on the distribution of the plant within California. And with that, thanks for watching, and thanks again to our friends at Tilden Regional Parks Botanic Garden for sharing their material.